that student dream where we're helping you to make money for college and life. And if you're like me, you've probably asked yourself, man, this politics stuff is wild. What does this have to do with my life? And how does this affect my money? Because that's what we talk about here. And so what I did was interview attorney and entrepreneur Justin Giboney to get the breakdown, the no fluff breakdown about the currency of politics, why it's actually relevant to any 18-year-old and up, right? And what you can actually do now to start using your currency in a way that makes you more money, makes your family more money, and impacts every other part of your health and wellness. All right, so go check out the interview. Let me know what you think, ask questions, and let me know what else you want to see too. So student dream, right? Our vision is to create Black wealth. We are super focused on this issue of the racial wealth gap. How do you see policy impacting the acceleration or deceleration of the creation of Black wealth?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, policy has played a clear role in it, whether you're talking about redlining, how we've been treated by banks, and then all those things. Policy in America has always had a racial element to it, right? And so there were literally policies on the books that kept African Americans from gaining generational wealth. I mean, and that's just a fact. And so I think that there has to be policies that speak to those racial disparities. It can't be colorblind policy because our laws have never been colorblind. And so that's the way that it speaks to it. Our policy needs to recognize racial disparities, and it needs to speak to those things.
So even with everything going on, when you see police brutality, my question now is, okay, what does it look like to draft policy? What does it look like for me as the citizen to play a role in influencing policy? This is what needs to take place to drive Black wealth. I think it's X, Y, and Z. What does that look like? Our influence and power when it comes to policy, new policies, new ideas.
Yeah, you can start at different places, but I think it all goes back to that study. You need to see where the conversation is at right now. And so sometimes what we do is we get a good idea, but we haven't really studied the process or where the conversation is right now. And so we come in and we're talking, but we don't know, the context, right? We don't know what's been done, what's been tried, or what people are trying to push. So one of the things that I say is go to your local city council and just sit and listen sometimes. And sometimes you can watch that so for the young people, sometimes you can watch that from your computer. Right? Every other week, usually there are city council meetings or school board meetings, and just listen to and look at what's on the agenda. Listen to how they talk about it. And then maybe one day you can go down there and you can comment, but you need to know how long are you supposed to comment, right? So you need to research those things, because you can go down there thinking you're going to give a 15-minute speech, and you only get to speak for 2 minutes, or you have to be on some existing list to speak at all. Right, these are the things that we need to know. So I think it starts with study, and then you got to be in it for the long term. I mean, I talk to so many people, and we've had these issues even with our housing initiatives. They want to hit the ground running. They want everything that they do to be. Daddy, Mom, time to go up the steps. And it's not even just millennials. I think people in general, we see politics on television. We hear people talk about it, and when we get into it, we want to make sure the change happens immediately. And if we don't see things changing, if we're not at rallies all the time and we can't do stuff that we can show on Instagram, we think nothing's happening. And that's just not the way politics work. Politics are not glamorous. And if you want to get a quick hit and get in and out, the truth of the matter is our system, we should always have a sense of urgency. But the truth of the matter is our system isn't set up for people to get quick legislative wins. It's not set up so somebody can come up with an idea and immediately get it passed or enacted. In fact, the founders even talked about that. They talked about transient causes. And so they knew that we needed a system that was set up so that just because somebody came up with a great idea, if you allow them to enact that great idea immediately and they haven't processed it and hadn't gone through the system, that could ruin the whole country. It could ruin your whole city or state, because you want people to have to think about it, and you want ideas to have to go through a process so that they're tested, instead of just putting a great idea on the people that hasn't really been tested. So the fact of the matter is, we have built-in inefficiencies in government purposefully. And the founders did that purposefully so that you didn't have these transient causes having terrible impacts on the people because they weren't tested. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing that we can do can be quick or that there's not something that we know we need to do immediately. But when you get into politics and you get into policy, you have to understand that that's just part of how things work. And if you really want to make change, you got to be willing to be in it for a long time. And that could be years. You know, it could take a long time to get some things done. Again, that shouldn't impact your sense of urgency, but the better studied you are, the better you know the process, the quicker you can get things done. But understand, as they say, the wheels of justice turn slowly sometimes. That can be a good thing or a bad thing, but you do want to fight against those transient causes, and we don't want, you know, kind of half-cocked ideas being placed on the shoulders of people. So I think, you know, when it comes to violence and violent, you know, kind of racialized violence against Black people, that's one of those things that, you know, we should have a sense of urgency, and it's attested, and we know kind of some of the things that should be done. So I don't think you have to sit back and say, well, we just have to wait on that. That's not one of those things. And so, yeah, we released a statement. The AND campaign released a statement yesterday on racialized violence in America. And we ended the statement, I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but we ended the statement with practical things people could do to make a change. And one of the things that I ask people to do is participate in criminal justice elections. Those are the elections of your judges, of your prosecutors, of your sheriffs. We have so many people that advocate for these issues, or they'll go out when things are getting crazy. But if you look at their voting record, they haven't voted in any criminal justice elections. And that's just, you know, we have to participate in those, because those are the people who are going to make this decision of whether a police officer who did something wrong is actually going to be prosecuted. Those are the people who, when our people go in front of the judge, they're the judges sometimes. And so if we're not voting on those things, then we're remiss, and we're trying to fight on the back end when we could have changed things on the front end. For young people that may not, you may have some people that may not even be voting age yet. But what everybody can do is do some research on campaigns. One of the best way to get into politics is actually to join a campaign. Again, I would ask that you research the candidates and see what they're about. But that's one way to get involved. And then when you get somebody elected, you hold them accountable. Because you can't force them to do the right thing, but you want to get to know where their heart is, and then you hold them accountable once they get in there. So there are ways that we can go about it, but again, we have to study, we have to be informed, and we have to understand the process and be willing to go at it through the ups and downs of policymaking.
That's good. What does that look like, holding your elected officials accountable?
Well, elected officials make statements about what they're going to do. Right? So usually they have a platform. They said, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And you want to hold them to that. But you also want to hold them to a general standard of leadership and integrity, and make sure that they're doing what's best for the people. When they don't do that, to organize a small group of people to hold them accountable.
That's good.
And what people don't realize, if you organized a group of 5 to 10 people and you went down to City Hall, or you went down to the school board consistently, people will start to listen to you.
Like, what's one piece of advice you wish you listened to at 22?
I think just my own advice early on, which is be committed to what you say you want to do. If you've decided in your mind that you want to, and you resolve that you want to be something specifically, take the time, take 30 minutes a day to read about it, right? Learn as much as you can about it, kind of engulf yourself in that arena. And you'll find that you'll get into classes, and you'll get into different situations where you already know the information because you've researched it for yourself, and you're far ahead of the game. And so that's one thing I would say. But also, I think at the age of 22, I would have told myself to really cultivate relationships, get to know people, and not just in a way where you're seeing what they can do for you, but start by what you can do for them. How can I help you?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, it's hard for people to not want to help you when you show that you're committed and that you really want to learn and do better. That's what people don't get.
It's good.
We like to ask people for stuff, but we haven't built a relationship with them. But if you build relationships with people and before you ask them for something, you've taken the time to show them how committed you are to it, people want to help folks like that because they see promise in them, and they think they can achieve something, and they know that what they give them, if they do end up giving them something, is going to be used well. And so when you kind of make cold calls, and sometimes you have to do that, right? Sometimes you don't have a choice, but you have to understand when people don't really know you or have a relationship with you, it is harder to give their resources to you because they have to steward their resources wisely too. And so building relationships and getting to know people, having people that can vouch for you. If you're in school, every year before you start a new semester, you should be thinking about one professor or one person in the administration who you're going to cultivate in a relationship with.
That's good.
Because guess what? At some point, if you want to go to grad school or you want to go, if you're in high school, you want to go to college, you're going to need somebody to write a recommendation. Think ahead, right? Think ahead of the game. And as you enter in a situation, know what you want to achieve. And part of that has to be through cultivating relationships and building a reputation for somebody who has integrity and somebody who is diligent. If you do that early on, in your 20s, even in your early 30s, you'll be way ahead of the game because you just have relationships and you build a network that isn't just based on what people can do for you, but what you've been able to do to prove yourself as well.
Thank you for that. Come on. Just looking at your sons now, thinking about obviously the women who are listening, but also specifically the young Black men who are listening, what advice or encouragement do you have for them as they're, leaving, many of them leaving to navigate this world, maybe just feeling angry or fearful at this current state of an environment, but really are looking for hope and still want to achieve their dreams? What advice do you have for them?
My number one thing is to say that you can do it, right? I think one thing that's lost, look, racism is real, bigotry is real. These are things that we have to deal with. But don't let anybody ever convince you that you don't have agency. And what agency means is that your decisions matter. If you ever get to the point where you think your decisions matter because your whole life is going to be determined by someone else, you're wrong. Your decisions matter, and you should take that as empowerment, right? Somebody who tells you your decisions don't matter and that the world is against you, they're wrong, and they're actually disempowering you. I would want to empower people, and what I tell my boys and what I want them to know, everything's not fair, but your decisions matter. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be easy and everything's going to go your way just because you make the right choices. But if you continually and consistently make the right choices, you will become what you want to become. And so in the midst of everything else that's going on, and I don't deny any of those things or dismiss them either, you have agency. Your decisions are going to matter, and just continually try to make the right decisions and be around people who lift you up. The last thing I would say is run with the swift. One of the best things that's happened in my life is to be around people who push me to be better, who don't allow me to sit around and feel sorry for myself or not try to be the best that I can be. When you're around people who push you to do better, it changes your whole perspective. And so you have to protect your spirit. You have to protect it from people who may be pessimistic, who may be kind of bitter or whatever. Protect your spirit and run with the swift. That doesn't mean you can't be around people who you need to lift up, but make sure you're also around people who push you.
Your book. So what would be your advice for some of the top 3 books that folks interested in leading in some form or fashion within the world of politics should read?
That's a good question. I think read biographies. I mean, there are several biographies. I'll give you I don't know if I remember all the names of them off the top of my head, but read biographies. I think, somebody to read from is Theodore Roosevelt. He was a president that did a whole lot and really changed the nation in a lot of ways. I think, I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt also was a president who was his nephew, right? And those are just good books. I mean, there's several different biographies on that if you want to get involved. But the one book that I always tell people who are very serious about getting into politics and policy and policy to read is called The Power Broker. The Power Broker was named the #1 political book of all time by the Washington Post, I believe it was. And anybody who really wants to talk to me about politics or wants help in politics to get going, I always tell them that they got to read that book and then get back to me. It's a long one, so you have to be committed.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot just about the good and bad side of policy and how people can come in with good intentions and end up doing really bad things, but also just how the system works. And this is what I tell people. Local. If you focus just on, so for instance, most people don't know, when you're talking about policing or mass incarceration, those issues aren't even best addressed on the national level. You know, mass incarceration is primarily a state issue, right? Most people who are in prison are in state prisons. And so you have people talking about this on the internet, and, you know, what do we do about Trump, about mass incarceration? There are things that can be done on the national level. The truth of the matter, most of that is state stuff, right?
Wow.
So you need to be talking to your governor, your state representatives. This is what people have to realize. And then when you're talking about police brutality and things of that nature, these are local issues, right? In a lot of ways, these are best handled on a local level. And so again, you have to be a part of your criminal justice elections and make sure that you're electing the right people. These, and if you're focused not always on the national issues and you focus on the local issues, not only do these issues on the local level kind of impact you more directly, but you can get some wins, right? You can get some wins, some more immediate wins that make you not be so pessimistic about what you can make happen. And so that's why I point people to that local level, because sometimes we just spend too much time talking about national politics. They are very important, but the impact isn't always as direct.
Right. I always say we have to understand the game and just what the rules are, how things work, in order to actually see things advance.
Right, and realize that a lot of the narratives and rhetoric that we hear, it's just inaccurate. And so you have to learn. I mean, if you're just listening to people talk about mass incarceration, you might think that the best way to handle it is on the national level, and there's things to be done there, absolutely. But the state level is really, where we see most of the issues.
That's good. All right, Justin, so this is my last question, one of my favorite questions. I think that throughout this pandemic, music has absolutely been an essential service for everyone. If you were to create a Conquering COVID playlist, what would be your top 3 songs and why?
I would say, I'd have to have some Mahalia Jackson on there, maybe Precious Lord, right? Or, His Eyes on the Sparrow, you know what I'm saying? Something like that to kind of pull you through and lift your spirits. Because I think what some of the kind of old gospel tells you is that things can be worse, and that and that things will work out for the better, right? And that we will get through it, we will pull through. And although we have pain, although we have hurt on the way, there's something greater ahead. And so I definitely have to put some Mahalia Jackson on there. I'd have to put "All Right" by Kendrick Lamar, right?
Okay,
I want
that's good
stuff, right? So we're gonna be all right. That's important. And then maybe even some Nipsey Hussle, Dedication. Hard work plus
patience. I've been waiting.
There you go.
That's good. Well, thank you so much, Justin. And obviously wanting to be a support for you and the work that you're doing with the AND campaign, and just really just serving and being such a great leader. I just want to thank you. But is there any way that the Student Dream community can be supporting you and your work?
Absolutely. So you can always find out what we're up to on at the AND campaign, andcampaign.org. You can check me out on social media. I'm at Justin E. Giboney, Giboney, Justin E. Giboney. And, there's always ways to get involved. So we have a chapter in New York. We have chapters in different cities. And if you want to get involved, you want to be a part of a change, I would advise you to check out some of our chapters. It is always individuals can get some things done, but groups and people coming together under the same values, under the same purpose, can get even more done.
As always, talk is cheap, talk is broke, and time is money. So you need to get started today. Let us know, what are your next action steps? What has been your aha moment? What book are you going to read? What subject are you going to be reading about for 30 minutes a day to really become educated and knowledgeable? And who are you going to start observing so you can start practicing and performing well in the world of serving people? Let me know in the comment section below, and make sure to hit that like button if you found any part of this interview helpful. And thank you again, Justin, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Nana. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. I will.